So occasionally I'll look back on some of these uploads that I've made just to see, I guess, what I've been up to, what people might think when they're watching me or listening to me or whatever. And I try to imagine what I would think if I were watching or listening to somebody like that. I'm a little biased, I admit. So I try to stay on something that's meaningful. But at the same time, I've never been one of these people that, well, how do I want to say this? I've never been one of these people that just says whatever it takes to be appealing or pleasing or sound right to the ear for whoever's going to be there observing. So you'll see me make lots of mistakes, and I notice the microphone picks up on little squeaks and noises, and sometimes I use a wrong word a word that it conveys the wrong meaning or identifies the wrong thing when I'm talking. Usually it's inadvertent. And I guess if I was a real fuss bucket, I would go back and fix all that stuff and try to edit, but I don't. You've noticed that. It's kind of the way I am. So I have to say this one thing. It's not necessarily a virtue to be that way. I maybe should care more about what other people think. But quite often my wife will say, she'll come to me and she'll say, well, you ought to do this, or you ought to, tuck your hair in, or get the cowlick out, or comb your mustache better, or whatever, fix your hat. There's all kinds of things. Change your shirts, just different things that she says. And she always follows it with this, because if you don't, what are people going to think? And my answer back is always the same. I don't care what they think. Now, that sounds like somebody that can be pretty bold, but quite often I'll go back and do whatever she asks just so that I can accommodate and not cause problems. I don't really choose to cause problems, but I realize sometimes I do. Just as an example, not of me causing problems, but of me viewing people who change themselves for others. It wouldn't bother me at all if in this life there was no such thing as women's makeup. It would not bother me. In fact, I would say, hooray, hooray. Just think of all the countless hours that get used up in the course of a day, over a week, in a community or a country, in a world where you have to stop and you have to fix your makeup. Now, my wife won't let me pay close attention, but I know it takes quite a bit of time, because if I'm going somewhere, she has to allot so much time for makeup applications. And I tell her, I say, I'm fine with you not ever wearing makeup, ever. Doesn't bother me. I think you're just as beautiful, even maybe more beautiful with it off than on, because it's the real you. And why should I really care all that much about something that's fake? You see where I'm coming from? Well, it doesn't go over very well, I can tell you that. And like I said, I don't proclaim it as a virtue. I have to back off of that a little bit. But I admire people when I see them out in public, especially women. I see women out in public that with no makeup on. And you might say, well, how come you noticed there was no makeup if you're not looking? Well, I look. But if I see someone without makeup, I mean, they're they're different than everybody else. Yes, but for good reason in my mind. And I think they're beautiful. I don't think makeup makes you prettier. There's some of you out there saying, are you kidding me? Turn him off right now. But I mean it. It just blows my mind when I see these things that they put on their eyes and they curl their eyelashes. And now they've gone one step further. Everybody I've noticed feels like they have to have a fake eyelashes put on. And they have to have eyeliner and eyebrow stuff and blush on their cheeks. And they have to have all kinds of things, eyeshadow. I don't know what else you women use, but save your time if you're doing it for me, because I like you better the other way. Now, that much having been said, I'm probably already in trouble with some of you, but it kind of ties into the original intent of this upload, and that, if you remember right, in the introduction to this YouTube channel, Me, Thee, and Charity, Me, Thee, Charity, it mentioned the transcendental viewpoint, which was, just no truth intuitively. And I don't think that women would look in the mirror and if we're trying to apply the no truth intuitively model to what they're viewing in the mirror, that all of them are going to say, oh, I'm ugly, I gotta fix myself. No, you're not ugly, you never were ugly. Our society has taught you to think that. You're not thinking it independently. There's this song that Don Williams sings, just came to mind. If I had it, I'd play the whole thing to you, but you can look it up or play it sometime. It's called She's a Natural. And it goes on and explains that this woman that he has is a natural. She just does it her way. Well, I don't think, in the case of women in makeup, I don't think her way is run for the makeup canister and kit. I think that's been taught to us. And I'm not saying it's only women. I see men that have to have certain kinds of shoes or else they think people look down on them. And I've heard of others that have to have certain kind of caps or people look down on them. I think this one I've been wearing cost me $1.98. So there you go. And until I told you, you probably didn't know that or wouldn't have thought that. And my wife, quite often when I bring something home from the store, I'll buy a generic brand or something like that I think might be just as good. And the first thing she'll want to know is, well, which one costs the most? Well, yeah, usually it's the non-generic brand. But isn't it strange that we compare cost to quality? If there are two dresses on the shelf, my wife, and they both looked exactly alike. And I'm not trying to demean my wife at all, but I anticipate that if one was really quite inexpensive and the other one was costly, she would think that the costly one was the best. And there might not be any difference whatsoever. Well, how'd we get to that point? How'd we get to the point where we let other people dictate what we do, what we think, what actions should we follow? how much time should we give trying to fix ourselves so that other people's thoughts will fall in line with whatever standard they set for us. I do admire independent thought, and it's getting to be a commodity that's kind of scarce. I'm going to read you something. Let's see. Maybe I can't find it. Oh, okay. I know what I was where my thoughts going now for just a little bit. So let me back out and sidetrack a little bit before I get to this. Let me tell you a story. Are you groaning? Another story? Are you getting me? Yeah. When I was in, and I hope it's not one I've already told you, because sometimes I think about things and I wonder if I've said that before, but that's okay. When I was in the 8th grade, we went to a K-8 elementary school. When I was in the 8th grade, I ran for political office, and I was elected the student body president of the 8th grade, which didn't mean all that much. It just meant that I had to get up, introduce programs and people, things when we did them, and I made some mistakes doing it. While I'm thinking of mistakes, I might as well just tell you one. So we had to go up to the high school, and they had a big auditorium, and the elementary was doing a program, and it was my job, because I was the student body president of the elementary, to find my way across the stage and find this slot in the curtain and go out front and welcome everybody. And then at the end of it, I was supposed to do that same thing and tell them thanks for coming and goodbye. Well, I did pretty good on the introductory part, but I'll never forget when it was all over, I kind of let it slip my mind, and one of the teachers, I think it was the principal of the school, even came and said, "Oh, you're supposed to go out there and tell them thanks for coming. You haven't done it." And so I ran across the stage, and I opened the curtain, and I walked out there. Well, half the people were already up and moving, and there was lots of noise. And I didn't know what to do. I finally decided that I couldn't get their attention, so I would just say my little speech and be done. And that's what I did. I said, "Thank you for coming to our program tonight. I hope you have a good time. Hope you had a good time, and be careful going home." And I ran back through the curtain and back off the stage, and I don't think anybody heard a single thing I said, but it was an experience for me. That's kind of a shift from where I was going, but I was going to actually tell you something else that happened to me in 8th grade. It's going to be one of those nights when I'm all over the place, I can tell, but hang with me. Anyway, I was all over the place. Here we go. In the 8th grade, I did some things that wasn't quite right with this groupthink thing, trying to make yourself appealing and acceptable to everybody, with the makeup example I've given. And I had to learn that the hard way. And one of the things I did in 8th grade that made me learn it the hard way, really hard way, was we had a parent-teacher organization in our school. I think back then, they have them PTOs now, but I think it was still PTA, Parent-Teacher Association. And it was a group of parents that organized and got together and tried to make the school experience the very best it could be for all the little students in school, and help the teachers, and just make life good for them. And one of the things that the Parent Teachers Association did to make life good for all the kids was they decided that they would do some fundraisers, bake cookies and have bake sales, and do whatever they could and try to make some money so that they could buy some playground equipment for the playground that we could all use. Now, I don't know too much about I know there were some bake sales and other things and donations. But it turns out it was the spring of the year, maybe April. They finally got enough money and they decided to buy a set of monkey bars. Well, I'm pretty sure they were called monkey bars. Anyway, they were kind of like the kind you climb up on in each end, and then they have a ladder that goes straight across with little hang things that you can go across on. When I'm saying monkey bars, that's what I'm talking about. And they had it, some of their husbands who were contractors come in and pour cement and places so that it could be put in place. And anyway, that was kind of the buzz around the school. The school that I was the student body president of, keep in mind now, the plot thickens here. Anyway, I was in this situation where everybody was admiring these new monkey bars at recess. This was the morning recess. And I don't know who came. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. I'll say that up front. But I was guilty of this groupthink. Somebody thought of an idea, and the other boys who were involved, anybody we could get, mostly boys, decided that we would check out this monkey bar set a little closer at the next recess. And the word kind of got around, and we decided we would, and what prompted this, I have no clue. But the goal of this little exercise was to see how many people you could hang on the monkey bars. And so we all reached up, as many as we could get there, and we hung on the monkey bars, and somebody else would jump up and grab onto the monkey bars. And pretty soon there were so many kids piled onto those monkey bars that it was kind of shocking. We didn't know we could do that. And I kind of bought into the idea. It sounded like fun to me. Guess what happened? The monkey bars started to sag and sag and sag, and pretty soon our feet were touching the ground, and the monkey bars looked like a sway belly piece of equipment. We had bent the monkey bars, the brand new PTA monkey bars. And there was a bit of a story to tell after that, because there were detectives amongst the faculty, and they found out who it was that was hanging on that brand new piece of Parent Teachers Association purchased equipment for our school, then bent them I shouldn't say all the pieces, but bent it so that it was unusable. And I remember by the end of the school day, there was quite a buzz in the school, because it very much upset the teachers, and the kids were upset too, because the teachers were upset, and everybody that was involved in hanging on those monkey bars was troubled. And if you happened to be the student body president and you were hanging on the monkey bars, it just made it that much worse. Now, you won't appreciate that until you actually experience it, but I was having some trepidation with all this now. It was really fun at the time, but now things had gone south. We were all in trouble, and you know what made it even worse? My Aunt Opal was the 4th grade teacher. She was part of the faculty. My Aunt Opal was good friends with my mom and my dad. And she let me know that she was really disappointed in me as a student body president and as her nephew for doing something like that. Those words bit pretty hard. I was really feeling guilty and like I was an evil person. And I knew there was going to be hell to pay somewhere because the faculty was not going to let that stand. Well, all the parents got informed, and I'm sure all got a talking to at home. Anyway, I did, and they all said, we'll try to make it right, and we'll do whatever we can and teach these kids a lesson that they're not going to do stuff like that and get away with it. They're going to be hoodlums. We're going to treat them like hoodlums and so forth. Well, so anyway, what happened was they decided that, yes, we would fix those monkey bars back to their original condition. Well, how were we going to do that? How are you going to straighten them? They had a big bend in on the belly of them. And the answer came in that one of the girls in our class, she wasn't the one hanging on the bars. Her name was Sandra. And her father was a construction person. He did sand and gravel hauling for people. And he had a big semi-truck. Not a semi-truck, a big dump truck. And he had this idea that she came to school with the next day, and she said, my dad has said that he will come back with his dump truck and back over those bars with the wheels, and there'll be so much weight on the dump truck that it will straighten out the monkey bar ladders so that they'll be straight again. And so we all took the monkey bars over, the pieces to the monkey bar set over, and put them on the driveway where the cold chute driveway was to the school. And the next morning, he came with his truck full of gravel and backed up over with his tires onto that monkey bar equipment. And sure enough, it straightened him out again. And we were all relieved. Like, oh, yes, we got him back to new. Now all we got to do is attach the bolts and we're home free. Well, guess what? We attached the bolts, and it did look just about almost exactly like new. The only thing we could tell was a few tire marks from the dump truck on the ladder part of it where he backed over it. But other than that, it looked new. And I was thinking, oh, that's good. And then I caught my Aunt Opal in the hallway, and I got some vibes from her that was not going to stand. We had not paid a big enough price for our mischievous behavior. We had disappointed the PTA, which we had, and she was in favor of implementing further punishment. Well, here was the punishment. For the next 2 weeks after school. So this is on our own time. We had to buy silver paint and paintbrushes, and we had to paint every piece of playground equipment on the whole schoolyard. And there was a lot of swing sets and all slippery slides and all kinds of things that had to be painted, and we would go out every night with a little bucket of paint and go to work on it. And sometimes we'd have to get ladders, and we had to figure out how to get it all painted, but it was not going to be satisfactory until every square inch on that remaining equipment was painted silver. And yes, I participated in that. And my Aunt Opal was looking out the window, I'm sure, during most of it to see that I was doing it right. Anyway, and the reason I take some time and relate that is because of this notion that we have that we've got to go along with the crowd. I started out talking about makeup, and then kind of shifted to this other story about when I was the student body president, got in trouble But I learned a great lesson from all that. And that was, I recognized that I would never have come up with that idea on my own. Somebody else came up with it and told me about it, and without really thinking, I just bought into it, and it got me in a lot of trouble. Well, I kind of think that's what women do with makeup, and a lot of us do with lots and lots of other things, our clothing and whatnot, and our styles, and the way we fix our hair and everything. Now, I've already come clean on my mustache in another video, so that has some utility to it now. I hope you realize it's not just a fashion statement. But if you haven't seen that, you'll just have to watch it. But anyway, groupthink can get you into trouble in a hurry. And I think gets us into a lot of trouble. I've already mentioned in other videos how advertisers use this all the time. They'll use some famous movie star or athlete, and they'll have them advertise anything from deodorant to peanuts to whatever, and shoes to hamburgers to you name it. And statistics will show that we run out and buy it because our famous athlete or movie star buys it. And so we do it too, and that's groupthink. That's not using rational, logical behavior. That's just jumping on the bandwagon. It's another way to say groupthink, I guess. Well, the thing that we have to realize, back to this original statement that was on my web introductory page or YouTube introductory page, is that we have the innate power to choose truth intuitively, or to know truth intuitively, which is the definition for transcendentalism. But do we stop and think about it? Because we act on other people's truths all the time. We jump on a bandwagon, and away we go paddling the boat or tooting the horn or whatever it takes to get on that bandwagon and ride it without really thinking it through. And my experience has taught me that it's all right to get on a bandwagon, but you better be, first of all, really cautious. And secondly, if you're going to stay on the bandwagon, you better find out what truth the bandwagon is tooting before you start tooting along with it. Because you can get into some bad situations otherwise. I had a friend in high school. His name was Howard Lamborn, and he was a kind of a mentor teacher to me. He was older. I was younger. He actually became one of my really good friends, and he was a religious person. But he wasn't always that way. If you hear him talk earlier in his life, he made some bad choices. He started drinking and getting away from what his parents had taught him all his life. And especially when he got out on his own, was doing some things that he shouldn't have done. And I can't tell his story, and I won't attempt to. But he had, the reason I mention his name is because he had a statement or a phrase that I've always used. He'd say, you know, there are good ruts. Now, quite often when we hear that phrase, you're going to get in a rut if you're not careful. That means you're going to slip down and just start doing something you shouldn't be doing. And pretty soon you're going to be in a rut and you won't be able to get out of it because the rut will be too deep or whatever, and you used it too many times. And he would say, he wouldn't deny that part of it, but he would paint the other side of it, and he would say, there are good ruts. In other words, if you find something good and beneficial, and in your heart of hearts, you think it's the right thing to do, even if it's not a rut, start doing it over and over again, and you make it a rut, and it'll be a good rut. But if you jump onto somebody else's just because somebody else said it, pretty soon you're into a rut, and you don't know whether it's good or bad. And then when you find out it's bad, it's too bad, and it's too late to get out of it. Well, I've often repeated his words to myself. There are good ruts. And I've tried to use his example and his words to go through my life, making good ruts. Now, I'll say that for what it's worth, because I think he was a good enough man. He was a religious man. He was a church-going man. He was the kind of man that you could trust, that showed true friendship. He helped me a lot. Like I said, he was kind of a mentor teacher. But part of his appeal to me was that he was genuine. There was no falsetto about him. Though there may have been earlier in his life, as I hear him talk, he had come to grips with himself and knew what he believed and acted what he believed. So there are good ruts. Don't forget that. All right, well, I was going to move on to something else. In fact, I actually have a scripture that I was going to read, but I'm looking at the time on my clock here tonight. And I think I'll draw it to a conclusion and hope you got something out of all this. As a kind of, I usually try to follow some sort of linear thought, and tonight I varied a bit. But I suppose if you could think of the linear thought that I was trying to present to you, it's this idea that we don't have to just follow the crowd. Don't be like the sheep. It's an animal that when one goes somewhere, if one finds a hole in the fence, they all find a hole in the fence, the same hole, and they all follow each other. If you can get one of them to go one direction, they all go that direction. If you've worked around sheep, you know this. And it might be a beneficial quality for sheep. I don't know whether it's self-preservation or something else that they are working for. But with people, I have come to admire people who are independent in their thinking, have rationale to their thoughts. They've searched, they've researched, they've applied, they've searched some more, and they blaze a new trail, a new rut, if you want to call it that. And then once they found that new rut, that seems to work, even if it's from generations ago, like religion, for example. Religion might be a falsetto thing, but if you try it and it makes sense to you, like it did to him, helped him out of some trials, then because he was the kind of person that he was, he wanted to make sure that you were experiencing the same kind of rut that he was, and that it was a good rut, one that you should be in. And I've always admired him for that. I really miss him these days. I was there when his wife died, or shortly after, and he was dedicated to her to the maximum degree. He seemed to live for her, even though he played tricks on her now and then. He always was a prankster, but he loved her deeply. And when she died, I saw him go into a loneliness that I've not witnessed with other people. And I spent the last years of our time together trying to talk to him and make him feel comforted, but he never did get quite that chuckle back like he had before. But he was famous for his divinity candy. in those last years. He couldn't do a lot of cooking like his wife could, and he knew it, but he knew how to make divinity candy. And he made divinity candy, and he distributed that to just about everybody in the town. He was paid to visit too with a plate in his hand saying, "Here, I made you some divinity." And that's the kind of person he was. He got into a good rut, and he made me a believer. There are good ruts. I already knew that there were bad ruts, like the kind I got into when I was in the 8th grade and got in trouble just following the group. Well, I hope what I've said tonight is meaningful and has some carryover value, something that you might use and think about. I realize you don't have the personal attachment to this individual that I had because you don't know him. But part of why I do these is to tell you about people and things that matter to me and that I have learned through now 75 plus years of living, that some things just matter more than others. And those are the kind of things I usually try to end up with. You'll have to scratch your head and dig a little deeper maybe to find the answer in this particular upload, but it's there, and it's filled with love, just like they all are, I hope. I hope you feel it. Good night.